Welcome to painting class. We're going to start off with watercolor, and then we're going to move on to acrylics on canvas if we ever make it back on campus. Now, with things going the way they are with the coronavirus, if we stay at home for the entire 2 blocks, we'll probably just work with watercolor. We'll see how things go. So we're going to start off with color theory. Now, we talked about this last year in general art, so this should be a good review for everyone. But when we talk about color, it's defined as a hue, and we break it up into 3 parts. There's primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. Now, the primary colors are your red, blue, and yellow. Your secondary colors are what you mix those to get green, orange, and violet. And then when you start mixing those in between those, you come up with your red violet, your blue green, or yellow orange, and red orange. Now when we talk about black and white, they're not considered colors, they're actually considered values. Now in our painting class, we're not going to use actually white because these are transparent watercolors. Transparent watercolors mean that as you dilute the colors down with water, the paper shows through, and that's what creates your white. And so it looks very, very different when you actually add the white pigment, because that's the only color that we're using that is opaque. So we're actually not going to use it at all. So black and white are considered a value. Okay? So when we do our color wheel, the first thing I suggest is that you take a pencil and very lightly just put red, blue, and yellow somewhere on the outside of the chart. Whichever one you start with, you go 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll be the second primary color. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the third primary color. By writing it on the outside, that assures that you don't accidentally mess up your counting, end up with too many spaces in one area, not enough spaces in the next. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to talk about the actual color wheel. To simplify the process for everyone, what I've done is I've actually drawn out the color wheel and the value chart. And that should be in your portfolio. So as you go through all your papers, find the one that has everything drawn out. It's the only one that I've done that with. As you start off, once again, I suggest that you just pick any random triangle, a little pie shape, and put the primary color. So I put an R right here at the top. I count 1, 2, 3, 4. I put a blue here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I put a white for yellow over here. And it doesn't matter where they are as long as they are in order, so you can start at any particular place. Okay, when we start painting, this is one that I started, and you'll notice that I leave a little bit of space in between each color. If you're painting quickly and everything's wet, if they touch, the colors will bleed back and forth. As long as you leave a little dry spot, they won't go back and forth. And so that's one of the things that I suggest, that you leave this little slight halo in between each color. Some of the things to be careful of: when you're painting, try to keep the thickness of the paints fairly consistent. This student was struggling. The blue is very, very thick, and so it's opaque. Then all of a sudden you come over here to the blue violet or the blue green, and they're very, very light, so it's showing a lot of the paper through. And so, try to keep the same consistent thickness of paint as you're spraying it. The other thing is, try to keep it kind of neat. It can get very messy very quickly, so see what you can do about that. So this is one that I've started, and so I put red, violet, blue, green, yellow, orange around just to make sure that I didn't get confused. The other thing is when you're using your paints, keep everything clean. As you're working, you can leave the paints and let them dry. That's just like the cakes that you used in grade school where you had the tray and everything was dry and you'd add paint to it or water to it to liquefy it. Well, we do the same thing here. We don't have to throw away our paint every time we're done. As long as we clean everything else out, we can leave the pure colors there. And so right now, the other thing that's very important is when you're mixing the paint, always start with the lighter value and mix the darker value into it. For instance, if I was making green, blue is much more intense in value than yellow. So if I start with blue and try to add yellow to it, it takes so much yellow just to get to where I need to be. I'll waste a lot of paint. If I start with blue, that's the problem. So start with yellow and then just add little bits of blue to it until you get the color that you need. Okay? And when you do this, don't paint all three colors. Start with just two of them and take care of that side and then move on. So I start with blue and red. So I'll get my blue wet. I'll get my red wet. Now if this is straight out of the tube, it's already soft, but you'll still need to add some water to it. Now between the two of these, which is the darker value? Well, it happens to be blue. And so as I get this softened up, I'm going to start with red. And I'm going to add blue to it. Now, one of the things that I suggest is that you always work with some white paper towel by your side because you can check your colors on that. So as I've added a little bit of blue to it, that's going to give me kind of a red blue, or a red violet, excuse me, a red violet. And I can paint it on here and see what I think. Now these aren't perfect colors, and so sometimes it's hard to get the exact color that you really want. So you have to get something as close to it as you can. And this is kind of a red violet, so that's what we're going to work with. So as I paint, I try to smooth it out as much as I can. Because the paper has a texture to it, the pigment has a tendency to sink and puddle into those, and that's actually one of the things that people like about watercolor. Okay. Now I'm going to try to get my violet color, so I need more blue. And of course, violet is another name for purple. But we tend to use the name violet because we don't say red purple and blue purple. We say red violet and blue violet. And that's not too bad. So that's the color I'm going to use. Now because I left that little dry line in between, I don't have to worry about the colors mixing. Okay, now my next task is to get the blue-violet. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is which colors we use, because in your kit you'll have 2 blues, 2 reds, 2 yellows. And so the ones that are closest to the primary colors, blue, we're using the ultramarine. The phthalo blue has a lot of green in it already. So you want to use the ultramarine. You want to use the brilliant red rather than the crimson. The crimson red has some blues in it already. Okay, so what I've done is I cleaned up my palette. So I'm starting with a cleaner palette. I've changed out my water, and now I'm ready to go on to the other side. And the first thing I do is I do my primary color. And now I can either work to the red side with the oranges, or I can work to the blue side with the greens. So I guess I'll go ahead and start with the blues and greens. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue to my palette. And remember, as long as you keep your paints uncontaminated, you can just let this dry and then use it again the next time you simply add water to it. Okay. So I'm going to take the yellow. I'll put it over here. And remember, I always start with a lighter value. I'm going to take a little bit of the blue and add it in. I want to create a yellow blue, or a blue yellow, or blue green. That's what it is. I want to start with a yellow green. Okay, so this will go right here. Now, if you ever get outside the lines and you need to get rid of something, simply take a damp paper towel and you can try to clean it off with that. Certain of the pigments tend to stain, others don't. And so sometimes, like if you're using a sap green or something like that, it's hard to remove it. But some of the others you can remove fairly easily. So I'm going to take my blue and start adding a little bit more here. That's not quite intense enough to be a good green. So I need to add a little bit more blue. I like that green a lot better. I'll test it, see what it looks like. It's not too bad. And cut.